Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about emotions. Again, but I'm going to talk about emotions in terms of what does it look like when we are emotionally unregulated or emotionally dysregulated, and how do we manage that when that happens? So, first things first, do you ever wonder why sometimes your emotional or behavioral response to either feeling a certain emotion or something happening in your external environment is sometimes severely out of proportion to the stressor or what's actually happening in the environment? Or do you ever wonder why you rarely ever seem to have control of your emotions or your emotional responses? If so, then you may be experiencing emotional dysregulation. So what is emotional dysregulation? Emotional dysregulation is the inability to accept your emotional response. Now, what this looks like in real life is we may feel hurt, but instead of you feeling hurt or allow yourself to feel that level of hurt or disappointment, you may mask it with anger. You may ignore or avoid that you're having that emotional experience, or you may simply just not accept that this is a situation that truly hurt you or caused you some level of disappointment. So first, that inability to not accept the emotional response that you're having. Second is sometimes you may view your emotions as threatening, nonsensical, or some things to be overlooked. You may feel like understanding your emotions are unimportant, or evaluating or being aware of your emotions is unimportant. You may feel threatened by those emotions, like you may fear what your response will be if you allow yourself to be angry. You may fear what your response would be if you allow yourself to be embarrassed or if you allow yourself to feel hurt. You may fear how you will respond if you allow yourself to accept that this is the emotion that you're having. So these uncomfortable emotions feel threatening. And also, not just fear of your response, you may fear that the emotion will overtake you and you won't be able to do anything else. You may feel like you'll get stuck in that emotional place. You may feel like you won't be able to get out of that emotion once you allow or accept that you are feeling that emotion. So you view emotions themselves as threatening. You view them as something to maybe avoid or not give a lot of attention to. Additionally, you may have the inability to self-regulate or to self-soothe when you're feeling uncomfortable emotion. So what this looks like is when you're feeling an uncomfortable emotion, that response is not proportional to what's happening in the environment. So you may have anger outbursts. You may throw adult tantrums. You may start to throw things around your home. You may start to break things or hit things. You may start to respond either physically, verbally, or emotionally in a way that is seemingly out of proportion to what's happening in your external environment. And lastly, it's the lack of emotional awareness. If you're not aware of what emotion you're experiencing, it's kind of hard to manage it. It's almost like saying, I don't know the speed limit while I'm going down this highway, but I'm gonna do 90. That's basically what we're doing when we don't take the time to examine what we're feeling. You may enjoy it for the moment because you're getting from point A to point B faster, but at the same time, what is the consequence of not knowing? What is the consequence of not making yourself aware? When we're dealing with our emotions, the consequence of not making ourselves aware of the emotions that we're having in the moment can lead to us allowing that emotion to dictate how we see the situation, how we deal with the situation, and how we deal with something that feels similar in the future. So being aware of your emotions is primarily that first step in being able to address that. Because if I don't know what I'm trying to address, if I don't know what I'm trying to target, then I may not know how I need to target. And different emotions require different strategies to manage. So with that being said, let's talk about how do you deal with emotional dysregulation. Like I talked about earlier, that first step is being aware. What are my emotions? What am I feeling? What are the bodily sensations? What are the thoughts that I'm having? What are the external factors that cause me to have a specific emotion? Let's say sadness. For you, sadness may look like not wanting to do what you had planned for the day. Sadness may look like you crying at random things that on a regular day would not cause you this level of emotional arousal. Sadness may look like feeling a lack of desire to eat. It may feel like wanting to eat more. Those may be signs for you of sadness. that first step in being able to deal with or learn how to emotionally regulate is being aware not only of what our emotions are, but being aware of what our body and our mind and our external environment is telling us about what emotion we may be feeling in that moment. So we tend to have mental health interventions to help with emotion dysregulation. A lot of people use cognitive behavioral therapy because it focuses on that mind, body, emotion trifecta. It focuses on all of those areas. But some people also utilize DBT. DBT is a little bit interesting because DBT is really helpful in emotion regulation, but DBT is typically recommended for those with borderline personality disorder. And although there are specific aspects, and there are a lot of aspects of DBT that are helpful for people who don't have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, being able to learn those strategies to manage our emotions are very helpful. This may be a time that is helpful to reach out for therapy, to meet with a counselor, to meet with a therapist, to meet with an emotional coach, to learn how to manage your emotions, to learn how to regulate those emotions. Another way that we actually address or deal with emotional dysregulation could also be with medication. I err on the side of understanding that medications are helpful long-term or short-term depending on your needs. But I do know that when you feel dysregulated, and there are times that you may be situationally dysregulated, medication can definitely be helpful in those times because the medications help manage the symptoms, so you're able to make the necessary lifestyle changes or put some things in place so you're able to think clearly to find a resolution for the stressor that may be causing this emotional overwhelm or this mental overwhelm. I am not the type of mental health clinician that says you need medication, but I am the type of mental health clinician that understands that sometimes medication is necessary and there should not be any stigma attached to you needing those medications. Now, keep in mind, emotional dysregulation is associated with multiple mental health diagnoses, and the treatment for those specific mental health diagnoses may be different. The treatment and the emotional dysregulation that I discussed today are more general. I'm not talking about emotional dysregulation specifically associated with ADHD or borderline personality or bipolar disorder or any other mental health diagnoses. Those require specific treatment options to deal with that emotional dysregulation, and that may require more long-term therapy or more specialized care. I am speaking about emotional dysregulation in everyday experiences, and those are not always something that is diagnosable. Emotional dysregulation is something that we may experience when we don't learn how to manage our emotions properly. And it requires some level of input from a professional or from your own learning to be able to learn how to manage those emotions more effectively so you can start to respond to external stressors in a more effective way and to be able to better manage your emotions so that you don't feel like you are responding or behaving or reacting solely off of emotions. What I hope you take from today's video is this. Emotional dysregulation is the inability to manage uncomfortable and complex emotions. You may respond or react out of proportion to either the emotion that you're feeling or the external stressor. You may notice that you have outbursts or behaviors that are not behaviors that you're wanting to display and are not ways that you want to react to certain situations, but you feel like you have limited control over in those moments. That is what emotional dysregulation looks like. And there are ways to treat emotional dysregulation. There are interventions, there are strategies, there are a lot of things that you can do to manage your emotions. With that very first one, learning to be more aware of what emotion that you're feeling and having in those moments. And other strategies as well that I talked about throughout the video. So take some time to look at those strategies as well, but also be willing to meet with a mental health professional or mental health clinician to learn the appropriate way to use these strategies. As always, please feel free to jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I hope you've learned something from today's video. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.